Okay. So, in Proverbs chapter 1, we continue our study entitled Pondering Proverbs. We're on page 2 of the lesson, and we're going to be concentrating on Proverbs 1 at verse 20, following through chapter 2, going all the way to the end at chapter 22, or at verse 22 in chapter 2. So we'll start reading at Proverbs 1 at verse 20, and we'll read a few verses at a time here. And we'll just maybe pass it around the room till we're done, maybe 10 verses at a time, and we'll go from there. So I'll start reading at 20, and then Linda, if you want to pick up at 30, and then we'll have Jim pick up 2:30, at 30, and then we'll have Jim read through maybe the first 5 verses of chapter 2, and then we'll just continue on like that. So starting at verse 20, wisdom calls aloud. Outside, she raises her voice in the open squares. She cries out in the chief concourses, at the openings of the gates in the city. She speaks her words. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn at my rebuke. Surely I will pour out my spirit on you. I will make my words known to you. Because I have called and you have refused. I have stretched out my hand and no one regarded. Because you disdained all my counsel and would have none of my rebuke, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your terror comes, like a storm, and your destruction comes like a whirlwind. When distress and anguish come upon you, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord.
They would not accept my counsel. They spurned all my reproof. So they shall eat the fruit of their own way, and be satiated with their own devices. For the waywardness of the naive shall kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But he who listens to me shall live securely, and shall be at ease from the dread of evil.
Let's go to like verse. Let's go to verse 8.
My son, if you will receive my sayings and treasure my commandments within you, make your ear attentive to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry for discernment, lift your voice for understanding. If you seek her as silver, and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will discern the fear of the Lord, and discover the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the path of justice, and he preserves the way of his godly one.
Jim, will you take us to verse 18?
He guards the paths of justice and preserves the way of saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice, equity, and every good path. When wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is pleasant to your soul, discretion will preserve you. Understanding will keep you, to deliver you from the way of evil and the man who speaks perverse things. From those who leave the paths of uprightness, who walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil, and delight in the perversity of the wicked, whose ways are crooked, and who are devious in their paths, to deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words, who forsakes the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house leads down to death, and her paths to the dead.
Then can you finish us out?
Men who go to her return, where do they regain the paths of life? So you may walk in the way of goodness and keep to the paths of righteousness. For For the upright will dwell in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the earth, and the unfaithful will be uprooted from it.
Okay. All right. So as we see there at the top of our lesson page, the lesson is basically entitled "Wisdom Personified," and we just read there and read a lot about wisdom, and very first verse, wisdom calls aloud outside; she raises her voice in the open squares. We have the wisdom of the Lord here in the scriptures, and it really is uh, it's crying out, and as we remember, the scriptures tell us that the very creation screams of the Creator, and there again, in many ways, however you want to take this verse, nonetheless, there's little excuse for shunning the wisdom of the Lord. The aim of the lesson, the compiler, see, the compiler urge upon his auditors the inculcation of wisdom through personification as he portrays wisdom as a woman crying out her warnings in the streets and places of judgment. You know what can we say is that is crying out in the wilderness today and crying out into the streets? What is it that the Lord has provided that cries out to the world now? His word, and that is cried out to the world through us, yeah, the church, individual Christians, and together as acting as the church, we stand as a hopefully a pillar and ground of truth in the community. We stand ready to share the gospel with others, and that in our day is how these things happen. Question number one in our lesson is: wisdom cries out; her warnings and exhortation may be heard in what places? Go ahead.
The street, the square, and the entrance to the gate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And there's again that is still true today, and it should be true. I mean, when we go out as uh, as a group, coming and going, as individuals, as we are out in the streets, we should be those that are crying out when we see the things that go on about us in the world that are sinful. Uh, we should be those that speak out against those things. It's a truth at the time that the Proverbs were written. It's a truth now. Uh, Question number two: as she cries out, what question does she ask the simple ones? And the scorners? And the fools? Yeah. And so the simple ones. Uh, who are the simple ones? And I'm asking this because I need your help. Anybody have an ideas?
I would say the simple-minded,
Okay.
those who just really don't think of anything.
And how long will you love simplicity? There are people that I guess I'm kind of getting a picture of someone who has blinders on. Don't tell me, don't show me. I don't want to see anything. You know, the naive. Okay.
One of my versions says the vulnerable.
The gullible. Okay. There you go. And so, uh, how do you fight naivete or gullibility, simplicity? How does one how does one not love that? How do you come out of something like that? Yeah, the knowledge of the scriptures and studying. Oftentimes, when we have children that we're rearing, and and helping along the way in life, we have to realize that sometimes they do things because they don't know any better, and they have to know better. They have to be told, this is not appropriate. This is not something that you should do. Uh, I hear stories and have heard stories for many years from Angela, who, comes home from school and has shared stories of what kids have done in school from time to time, and and seeing, that my own children having done things. Anderson and all of them at some point in church. It was hard to sit for an hour in church or an hour and a half, and eventually they were taught. And as far as I know, they sit now for the most part. And so it is something that takes time to share the truth with our children. But the same thing, we can get. I think that this scripture points out, we can get complacent with not knowing more. That idea that if we don't study and find out more about God's will, then we can't be convicted. Now, whether we do that on purpose or some may do it just unwittingly, but there is that fear of if I take this next step, that means that I have to get more serious. So how do people love scorning? Have you known anybody that loved scorning, that was uh, happy to be unhappy? I,
Would you put that in as a full or scorn of those that say that they don't want to go to church, they've been here before, and they just see a bunch of hypocrites, and they don't want to be part of it?
yeah, yeah. I would. I'm equating it to like complainers, and just uh, people that are just generally, and when you use a word to identify a word to uh, define a word, but scornful people that have just unhappy. Yes, yes, a hardened heart. Yeah, absolutely. And there are, first of all, in a situation like that, oftentimes it creates an adrenaline rush if you get worked up about something, and people become addicted to that, and it becomes a very comfortable thing for them. And again, hating knowledge, the fool hates knowledge. You can it kind of goes right back to how long will you love simplicity. There's the hiding in the corner. I don't really want to learn more. I don't need to know more because I might cut my heart and I might need to do something. And then there's those that are just straight out. I hate the scriptures. I hate learning things. I don't need any book to tell me how to live, and I don't need. You hear people say that they don't need the Lord to show them how to live properly and so on, and it's sad. But but that's outlined here. Those that hate knowledge. Number 3, as a result of rejecting her counsel, what things will come upon them?
Shall laugh at their calamity and mock when their dread comes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have calamity, terror, destruction, and distress are listed in the New King James. And if you think about that, if you think about somebody who, uh, you know, a person who is doesn't want to learn anything else, they don't want to know how to handle situations. Calamity is going to come if you're not serious about learning how to operate a vehicle. You say you're 16 years old and you're not serious about learning to operate a vehicle, then you just decide to jump in and you don't take seriously those things that you should come to understand. There's calamity in your future, most likely. there's destruction. And as we go through life, if we reject the counsel of the Lord, there's calamity, there's terror, uh, there's distress that is likely to come into our future. Not that you know being a Christian doesn't take all of the hard times out of life, but what does it do? What happens to a Christian who's grounded and faithful when the hard times come? Helps you through it. You have a hope to hold on to. The pain might still be there. The hardships, the hard times may still be there because of the fallen world that we live in, but you can get through it with that hope of heaven after a while. It's so powerful. Uh, coming through these last years with all of the things that the world has put up with death and diseases and so on. All these things have been sad, but I have to. Well, I know for myself, it's been a lot easier because of the hope that I have in heaven. I have been sad. We just mentioned Angela and I just mentioned a brother who passed away from Bedford, and just saying I can't believe he's gone. He was a healthy person, and now he's gone, and that is his being gone is uh, lessened quite a bit by the knowledge that he knew the truth and that he was a faithful follower of God, and that is something that no one can take away from us. So this calamity, terror, destruction, distress that comes upon and will just by nature come upon those that scorn the Lord, that turn their back on him and don't want to hear of his word. Number 4, when is it too late? They will call upon her and seek her, but she will not answer because they had hated what? They had hated knowledge.
In this particular question, what is the her and the she? I have nothing in here that indicates that there is a her or a she.
Speaking of wisdom.
Yeah, but even in the King James, it says they will call upon me, not her.
Mm-hmm.
They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me. They did not choose the fear of the Lord. I don't.
That you're onto something there. Yeah, I mean, in the beginning of the passage, in the context of this passage, it's that her is pointing back to wisdom. I'm pretty sure, but in the section of scripture that we're dealing with there at verse 28, uh, and so on, you're right. I hadn't caught that. Yeah.
They will call upon her, meaning knowledge, or seeking her.
Right.
Knowledge again, but she will not answer. Now it's God that's not going to answer, not knowledge.
Yeah. You've got a good point there.
It's wisdom, not knowledge. I think.
Because they hated wisdom. Okay.
I think the me is wisdom.
Verse 29 it says because they hated knowledge. But knowledge, wisdom.
Yeah, like the author explains here that it's a personification of wisdom. In other words, wisdom is talking.
Mm-hmm. I'll take it. Yeah. What's that?
It's okay, but I just don't associate that, all of it, with wisdom. It's not wisdom that's not going to answer.
Right. Well, in effect, if they had hated because they will not answer, he will not answer. We'll change that because he will not answer because they had hated what? Um, it hated knowledge, his word, uh, wisdom, which is also his word. I can see where we're going there. But yeah, yeah. Again, as we go through these lessons, we're going to find uh, questions that are worded differently than.
In the previous verses that you see all the bad things that come upon these people because they did not seek out wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So wisdom comes back and speaks and says, they'll call on me, but I'm not going to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they rejected me.
Right. And if they had refused to choose what? The last part of that question.
Fear of the Lord.
Yeah. And that's the beginning of what? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now, along the same line, oh, sorry, I'm skipping one. Number 5, when they are punished for having rejected her counsel and reproof, she says they actually are only eating of what?
The fruit of their own way.
The fruit of their own way. Yeah. And that basically means that, to put it in a saying that you might have heard in growing up is that you made your bed, now lie in it. You've made choices, and when you have rejected the counsel of wisdom, when you've rejected the knowledge of the scriptures, then you've made your choice, and the things that happen because of that are the fruit of that choice that you made. And that's true on both ends. We make choices. We make choices to be faithful. We make choices to seek the truth, and we reap the fruit of those choices as well, much more abundantly because of God.
And, well, choices have consequences.
Oh yeah, every one of them. Yeah, yeah. Whether good or bad, we make choices every day, and we've all made bad choices. We've all made good choices, and we have seen. Sometimes we're fortunate in that some of our choices don't lead us to really bad fruit from those choices. I know that I've benefited from some good fortune in the past, of not being hit too hard with some choices, and but other times it comes out and rears its ugly head. So we need to have that fear of the Lord so that we can make those choices according to that knowledge that comes when we put God in His place in our hearts and in His rightful place.
And
And
times we make choices and we make the wrong choices because we didn't know what the right choice was.
right,
So whose fault was that?
yeah,
Ignorance of the law is not an excuse.
yeah, it's
Even our own law, civil law,
yeah,
states that ignorance of the law is no excuse.
right,
The exact same thing is here. Now we go to a lot of people go to school or training for years, so they learn how to do something the right way.
mm-hmm.
Yet when it comes to living and making the correct choices, we choose not to learn what the right way is.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time in society. I think humankind has done this from the beginning, uh, since the fall. It's always been somebody else's fault, hasn't it? Uh, when Adam was confronted with, "What have you done?" Whose fault was it? That woman that you gave to me. When Cain killed Abel, whose fault was it is just uh, always turning around, uh, trying to place the fault somewhere else. That's why I don't like the word accident when it comes to a car crash, because it kind of lifts some of the blame off of the people involved. It's not just simply an accident. Choices were made, and as a result of those choices, crash happen. Whether they be simple little things or not. Whether it be leaving too late or the choice to be distracted, whatever it is. Those things uh, cause the outcome, and it would help us all, myself included, if especially in our spiritual lives we put things squarely in the place that they belong, and take the blame for those bad choices that we make, and then we can then step forward and correct those things. But if it's never our fault, not going to fix anything. So it's the fruit of their own way for question number 5. Number 6, along the same line, what will cause the destruction of the simple? Right. And the fools? Yeah. And what shall be the reward of those who hearken unto her? Yeah. Dwell safely and secure and without that fear of evil. Yeah. And going back to the fools, again, complacency. What is complacency? It's
Kind of like being in a status quo. I don't want to do anything more that's going to jeopardize where I am right now, but I don't want to do any less either. I'm comfortable with where I'm at.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're happy with where you're at in life, you're happy with yourself. It kind of reminds me uh, of the rich uh, farmer that had put away, built bigger, tore down his barns and built bigger barns because he had so much, and he was going to rest and take his ease. Uh, he was happy. I've done enough, and and then of course that day his life was required of him, and we can become so complacent, and it is a foolish thing to do, to be complacent. And we go through everyday life, and it's easy to become complacent with the condition of the world, and for the lies that people believe in the world. It's easy to become complacent with that, and that's a foolish thing.
Complacency also kind of goes with it that I don't need to improve.
Yeah,
I'm good where I'm at, so I don't have to improve, so I won't improve.
right. And that's a lot of unfortunately a lot of people's feeling um, when it comes to their salvation. I've done what I need to do. I've checked the boxes. I've gotten wet. I've been dunked out of the water. I go to church on Sunday. I don't need to do anything else. That is uh, complacency. It's just what it is. Number 7. What are the 4 sets of parallel causes given here as prerequisites of our receiving the promise that we shall understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God? Anybody get those? I, I I I find this question to be a little. I'm not quite sure where he's going with it. You're,
Calamity, distress, your dread and anguish.
I came up with incline your ear, and he gives. Apply your heart and store it up. Cry out, which guards and shields, and then to seek. Now, that was coming from the verses here that I was assuming are where he was. I tried to line up where we were and tried to figure out, okay, what's he seeing here that is asking for these prerequisites? And I should have written down Da, da, da. Oh, so at the very beginning of chapter 2, um, verse 2, you incline your ear to wisdom, apply your heart, cry if you cry out for discernment, and lift up your voice for understanding. You seek her as silver, and search for her as hidden treasures. And then you will understand the fear of the Lord. When you incline your ear, then you will understand. And then when you apply your heart, the Lord's going to give wisdom. You know, I think that's what he was meaning with the parallel, but that's the closest I could get is to parallel those two things. Does that maybe that makes sense to you?
He says four sets, and there are 4 things.
Yeah, that's the nearest I can come to with that.
I think that's where he was going.
So, what is the source of this wisdom that we are to seek?
The Lord.
Mm-hmm. And discretion shall preserve, and understanding shall keep. What class of people? And I don't like that verbiage, but but what people will that preserve? The righteous is what I came up with. And from what class of men shall these people be delivered? Evil is what I was getting at there. And wisdom will deliver one from the strange woman who uses what to entice us? Yeah, flattering words is what I have there. And in contrast with the upright, who shall dwell in the land of their fathers? I think I missed that one. I believe that's going to be the righteous. But we are told that the wickedness and transgressors shall receive what fate? Verse 22. But the wicked will be cut off from the earth, and the unfaithful will be uprooted from it. So in verse 21, they use the term the upright and the blameless. So that would be the who's going to dwell in the land of their fathers. So, any questions there? We kind of got into a whirlwind there at the end just to get done with that page.
Really quick, like the very last verse, 22.
Yeah.
I have to wonder how many of these people who seem to think that there's going to be 144,000 that are going to be saved, the rest are going to stay on the earth. When they see this and say that the wicked will be cut off from the earth, and the unfaithful will be uprooted from it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd like to take something so simple and take it out of context and turn it around and make it be something else.
Yeah. As somebody, I forget who says it now, but I repeat it all the time. And they say that you have to have help to think that way. You know, it's just the truth. All right. Well, we are all still in the room since we didn't have our classes in the back. So we'll turn this over to Ed, who's going to have our invitation, and I'll leave the microphone here for you, Ed.
Okay, I don't want to use it anymore. Okay. It should be good right there.
Yeah, it'll be fine right there.
In just a few moments, we'll sing 589. But in the meantime, more and more and more. And it's one of the reasons why I don't watch the news anymore, is all you hear is bad things. It's rare that you hear something very good in the news. And one of the things that just seems to keep popping up, whether you see it in the news, whether you read it or whatever, is retribution or payback. You see it all the time. If you just simply look at the government, on one side, this group is saying one thing, and the other side is saying, well, if you're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And it but when it falls down to the individual, we have many examples. I'll use two of them today, but there are many examples of those who have been wronged, and the way they handled it was just definitely not the way most people would handle things. In Second Timothy, chapter 4, in verse 14, as Paul's writing to Timothy, he says, Alexander, the coppersmith, did me much harm. May the Lord repay him according to his works. Now, Paul didn't say I was going to do something. Paul just left it up to God. And as our example, we should be following that as well. And the way that he handled it should be the way that we handle things as well. But we can also take a look back at Acts chapter 7, verses 59 and 60. And they stoned Stephen as he was calling on God, saying, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. Then he knelt down and cried out with a loud voice, Lord, do not charge them with this sin. And when he had said this, he fell asleep. Stephen had no animosity towards those who were killing him. You can't go much deeper in trying to aggravate someone other than trying to kill them. And yet Stephen was such that the examples, and I'm sure that the examples that he had as he was following through and watching Christ when he was here, saw that attitude. And Christ had the same attitude as well when he was hung on that cross. And so looking at just those two examples and looking even at Paul and the life that he led and the many things that he went through, but yet he left everything up to God. His main purpose was to preach the gospel, and that's our main purpose. Our main purpose is not to get retribution. It's not to condemn someone. It's to preach and teach the gospel. It's just that simple. And for those of us who have obeyed the gospel, we're not perfect. We all know that. And God has told us that we needed to remain faithful. In Revelation chapter 2, verse 10, it says that if we remain faithful, we'll have that home in heaven. Well, God has also given us the avenue of prayer to ask him for forgiveness. And because we have, as followers of Christ and being the church, we have the blessing of coming to each other and asking for help as well when we believe that it's needed. But there's also those who are outside the gospel, that who have not been obedient to it. And it's fairly simple. We just need to hear the gospel being preached in its simplicity. We need to believe those things. And then as we do, repent, turn away from those things that God would not have us do as his children. And then confess that Jesus is the Christ. And then, of course, the final thing is to be baptized. Why? I don't know. God said so, and that's what he wants us to do. So if there's anyone that needs the prayers, or if you're in need of being baptized, then we ask you can reach us at our website, and we will get to you and try to help you with that situation. We'll ask